Hey everybody, welcome to Fab Fit Friday on this chilly day in Connecticut. I actually am wearing my first new winter raglan sleeve that I made during my class last weekend. And I'm just going to stand up and show you guys. Nobody's here with me yet, so I figure I can do a little fashion show. This is a piece of sweater knit that I got from a store in West Hartford Center that was closing, and it's a really cool piece of fabric. It was a, sort of a hacked up piece because, let me just show you the sides here. So when we went to go look at the fabric, because they advertised that you could come and just take whatever fabric you wanted from what they had left over when they were closing. This was one of the few pieces I had that was big enough to cut out sort of major front and back pieces. So I paired it with a soft sweater knit, and it is so cozy. I haven't finished the sleeve yet. In case you can see, it's sort of a weird, not really wrist length, not really 3/4. So I'm going to either finish it with a band like I did at the hem. So see, the hem has a band. I may put a band here. Maybe I'll make it with the thumb hole for the winter, but it is pretty chilly today. So I'm wearing my, I'm wearing my, my new raglan, and I was actually hoping I would be wearing my new muslin, but I've realized, like, if I get a kink in my schedule or something happens, it throws me off course because my schedule is completely jam-packed. But I will tell you, I was hiking this morning and I fell flat on my face, not my face, but I stopped myself with my hands, and so my hand hurts and my lower back hurts, and so I was moving around a little bit slower than my normal lightning speed. So I got my muslin cut out, but I did not sew it together. But I thought it might be fun for you to see how to sew together a muslin. So before I show you that, I'm going to show you some changes that I made. Hi, Andrea, welcome. I was playing with the fine-tuned fitting of my sleeve, and I had a few things on my basic bodice that I was not, that needed to be tweaked. I raised my darts. So I felt like my bust and waist darts were about 1 inch too low. So let me just show you my pattern pieces so I can, hold on one second, I'm going to switch my view. Okay, so here are my pattern pieces, and I just want to show you the changes that I made. Then I'm going to sew this together, and we're going to pop it on and see how it actually looks. So basically, hi Christiana, welcome. We're going to see how it looks after I finish sewing it. So basically, the first thing I want to show you here is, if you remember last week, I needed more ease in the cap from the adjustments I made. So what ended up happening when I sewed the muslin together was I had too much ease in my cap and under my arm. So one way to keep track of what you're doing when you're adjusting a pattern, I like to tape the things I trim off my pattern and put it right, tape it right to my pattern so I'll know what I did. So for this adjustment, what I did was I trimmed off about, 1/4 inch. And actually, I think it needs to be a little bit more. Let me show you the actual muslin here. What did I do with that? It would be really nice if I could keep everything. Wait, what did I do with the muslin? Hold on one second. All right. Seriously. Oh, I had it right on the table. Okay, so what I want to show you here is, keep in mind when you're working on your your muslin for your bodice, or really any muslin, you can try certain things in your muslin that you have. You don't have to, you know, start from scratch every time. So actually what I want to show you here is I took up, oh actually it's like 5/8 of an inch. So here's my shoulder seam. This is my front armhole, and you can see I took it up almost like 5/8 of an inch down to 0 by the front notch. So actually let me fix that. So basically I've already taken off about, I would say, half of what I actually did. This is actually, I think, upside down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, here, this. I'm going to just take a little bit more off. So I'm going to come in here, and I think combined this will now match what I actually did. But you can see if you change something in your muslin or your garment. So for example, you can see, I'm going to just draw it on here so you can see. I'm going to draw the edge of the armhole so you can see what I pulled out of the cap. Okay, so I think you can see it better. From this purple line over to the edge was what I pulled out. So to transfer this to your pattern, you would basically just trim it off the outside edge. So basically, I did part of it, but when I was doing that, I didn't check to see exactly. So now I'm just going to cut this off and just make it nice, you know, a nice smooth transition. So actually it's double. So I'm just going to pop that on with a piece of tape. Hi Mary, welcome. Oh, YouTube was delayed for you? Well, it was kind of interesting. I started this live, and for the first couple of minutes, nobody was on with me. So I was wondering if, you know, people were busy this weekend or whatever, but thank you for joining me. Hi, Rena, welcome. So I'm showing how to transfer adjustments from your muslin back to your pattern here for a second. And basically, just to recap, I pulled out this much in the front armhole, cap, because I was getting a wrinkle here, and it looked to me like I had too much width to my cap, so I pulled it in, you know, right on the seam here. So now that I fixed that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my sleeve, because I've already cut out my sleeve, and I'm just going to trim it to match. So here's my sleeve that I cut out. And notice I marked my back and front notches here, so I can just put this right back on, line it up with the cut edges of the wrist edge, the underarm seam, and the cap. And then I can clearly see right here the amount I have to trim off to actually take off as much as I did on my muslin. So let me just put a thing here. All right, so basically I'm just going to trim this off right here. All right, so now I have a cap that matches my adjustment. Okay. All right, so the other thing I did was I trimmed about a generous 1/4 or 3/8 of an inch off the underarm seam, and then I had to do it to my side seams as well. So remember, if you shorten or take in your underarm seam, you have to do the same thing to the side seam of your bodice, so this part of the sleeve will still fit. So from the underarm seam to the notch and from the side seam to the notch, that'll still agree because I trimmed an equal amount off of the underarm seam and both my front and back side seam. So that's what I did to fix what I thought was going wrong with my sleeve and my sleeve cap, too much width on the cap, and too much a little bit under the arm. So I fixed those two things. The other thing I did was I pulled up my bodice 1 inch because I felt like my bust darts were too low. So I hiked that up 1 inch. And because I just went straight through and just hiked it up equally, I also shortened my back 1 inch as well. And when you shorten the back, I had to lower my dart in the back 1 inch as well. So those were the things I did to fine tune the fit of my bodice. So now I'm going to show you how I would sew a bodice together. And since this is a basic bodice draft along and I haven't showed you any sewing yet, I might as well do that. So the easiest thing to do is, hey Judy, welcome. Hi Jerry. Jerry says, hi all and happy fabulous Friday from Southern California. Oh, that's so nice. We've got fall. I'm actually wearing one of my fall winter raglan sleeves because I am cold today. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you how I sew my darts. So let me get this so it's a little bit closer view here. All right, so what I'm going to do, maybe I'll move me. I'm going to move me over to here. Okay, that's probably better. All right, so what I'm going to do is to sew my darts, the first thing I want to show you is to mark them. I literally poked a little hole in the paper pattern and let my Sharpie marker bleed through my fabric. And the nice thing about that is it bleeds through from the front, the top piece, right through to the back piece. So it makes it very easy to mark your darts when you're just making a fit muslin. And then I just drew in my stitching lines. All right, so to sew these darts, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold them in half. And the other benefit of using a Sharpie marker is I can actually see the dart legs through the fabric. So I can look and make sure I'm lining up both of my dart legs. And then this way, I don't have to waste a lot of time sewing my darts accurately because I can see them. Now, obviously, on a garment, you're not going to want to draw with Sharpie marker. So I like to pin through. So you can see here, I'm pinning through the dart leg. So the pin is right there. Can you see it? And it's also pinned right to the dart leg in the front as well. So that just tells me that when I sew these, I'm going to be sewing them accurately. So I'm just going to go ahead and just put a couple pins. And actually, you want to put your pins so when you sew, you can take them out easily. So sort of pay attention to the orientation that is going to go into the machine. So this pin is both upside down and backwards. So let me just put it in this way. And then let me just pin the second one right here. Okay, so I've got that one pinned. And really, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pin all the darts at the same time. It's sort of like a production sewing kind of thing. You know what I mean? So like if you've got a bunch of darts to pin, if you pin them all at the same time, then you can then sew them at the same time as well. And I think that just makes a little bit of an efficient sewing if you can do all your darts in one shot. So I'm just going to pin them along the dart leg, and I'm going to make sure I'm catching that same dart leg on the back side, or the opposite dart leg, I'm sorry. So see how it's matching there and there. So one is pinned. Let me just pin them all. The other thing about using the Sharpie marker is, like, I know I am pinning these all at the right, you know, the right side, or I'm sorry, on the wrong side. So I know I'll end up with a right and left. So it just makes it really easy to see and to pin. And I'm basically working with 2 pins per. 2 pins per dart, and I'm paying attention to where I'm going to be sewing. So I know I'm going to be sewing like this. So I'm putting my pins in so they're easy to take out. That's just a little thing, but it does make a big difference in terms of, you know, your ease of sewing. If you put your pins in backwards or upside down, then they're a pain to take out as you go along. So I like to try to remember to put my pins where it's easy to then take them out. Okay, so I've got those pinned. I'm just going to quickly pin my back darts as well, and then, like I said, I'm just going to sew all the darts. And I'll show you a few different methods for sewing a dart. Obviously, on a muslin, the goal is to get it so it's accurately sewn. But when you're working with a garment, you want to make sure you sew it in a way where it's accurately sewn and the tip of the dart sort of blends right into your fabric so you don't get any pucker. So I'm going to talk about some strategies for that. Like, I never back tack on the tip of a dart. And of course, I think in one of my recent videos I said I never say never, but that's another thing that really can cause havoc to the tip of your dart, is if you back tack and you're not backing up exactly on your stitching, then you end up with like a goober or a pucker. So I'm going to give you some strategies for sewing to the tip of your dart without needing to back tack. All right, so we're going to do the back ones first. Oh, that's better. All right, I'm just trying to get my camera in a good way here so you can see what we're doing. Okay, so I am just going to sew this dart up, and I have a 2.4 stitch length. I'm just going to back tack at the end, take my pins out as I go. Now, as I come to the tip of my dart one way, as I get within a 1/4 inch, I'm going to make my stitch length like just 2.0, a tiny little stitch length, and then I'm going to stitch right off the fabric. Now, sometimes that's enough to hold your tip from becoming unsewn, but also notice I made this little a little bit of a chain here, so now I can put it back in and just catch the tail in the dart, inside the dart intake, and create a knot and to secure it. So what we end up with is, you can see here, I did not back tack, but I did secure the end by just tacking it, the tail here. So see, there's my tail, see? So that's one way to sew a dart. Another thing you want to pay attention to when you're sewing your darts is, I'm going to put my stitch length back at 2.4. When you're coming up to the tip of your dart, be really careful about what you're doing. Remember, you want to come right off the edge of that fold very gradually. If you veer out back into the garment as you're coming to the tip of your dart, it's going to bring more fabric into the dart, and it can cause a pucker or a bubble. So you want to make sure you're approaching that tip of that dart super gradually. Okay, so let me just sew these bust darts here in my front now. So sometimes if you're working with a fabric that can tolerate a tiny little stitch, so I'm actually going to go to 1.8. Just sewing that tiny little stitch length can be enough to keep it from unraveling as well. So that's another way that you can secure the tip of the dart without back tacking. Okay. So I'm going to make my stitch length really tiny here. I'm just going to stitch off the edge. All right, and notice how fast this is going. I only have 2 more darts to go. I did 2 back waist darts. I did one side of my front, and now I'm going to finish up. I think it'll be kind of fun to see how this fits with you live in person. I'm hoping it's going to be the fit that I'm dreaming of, we'll see. But we can have the big reveal together. Oh, someone said, Ghislaine says, I love your videos. I am Brazilian. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope I just didn't mispronounce your name really, really badly. Thank you so much for joining me. Okay, so I'm just going to finish up this last dart. This one I just made the chain, and then I'm going to just catch it in the dart intake here. Okay. All right, so now let me show you how to press a dart. So I'm going to get my little ham here, and I'm going to put my cutting mat here so I can also use it to sort of have my iron right here because I have a bunch to do. All right, so when I press a bust dart, I like to use my ham. This is actually my mom's ham. It's probably older than me. It's still as firm as a rock. I love it. So to do a dart, I like to find the curve on the ham that agrees with the shape of the dart. So for the back waist darts, the top of the ham is pretty flat and gently curved, kind of like my back waist dart. So I'm going to iron across the tip of the dart because I don't want any fold or continuation of that dart to show in the fabric above the dart. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to press my back dart towards the side seam, and I'm just going to gently steam it from the wrong side. Then I'm going to flip it over, and I can, give it a little bit of a better press. One thing about pressing darts, depending on your fabric, if you press down too hard, you can actually press the shape of the dart intake into the right side of your garment, and that's kind of like over pressing. You don't want to do that. You want to just press the dart so it's nicely shaped, but you don't want to press the indentation of the dart intake into the right side of your fabric. And so you can see the crease right here where I folded my dart. That's the first thing I'm dealing with by ironing across it to get that, from showing. Flatten that out. And then I'm just going to lightly press my dart from the wrong side, turn it to the right side, and again just give it a little bit of a soft. I'm not pressing hard because I don't want to press my dart intake into my actual fabric. Okay, so now we're moving on to the bust dart. Well, let me do the waist dart in the front first, because the waist dart in the front is going to be very similar. I can probably use the top, or maybe now we're going to be working more on the side, because see, when I lay this on the top, you can see I can't get this to lay flat. So I'm going to turn my ham so I can take advantage of this tighter curve here, and I'm going to sort of position the dart on that edge so you can see how it's conforming to the shape of the dart, so that way I can get in here and flatten that out above the dart. And then I'm going to press my waist dart towards the side seam. All right, and then I'm going to let's do the bust dart as well, because that's going to be over here on the side as well. Now I have a D plus cup size, so I'm going to press my dart intake up. If you have an A, B, or C, you can press your dart intake down. And I think I mentioned this earlier, that I heard somewhere along the line in my little sewing career that if you press the dart up on a bigger cup size, it minimizes the look of your bust. I haven't played with it enough. I haven't made enough shirts to really decide if I think that's, significantly true or not. But, when I hear things from people that I respect in sewing, I kind of go along with it unless I try it and there's an absolute reason not to. But I like to incorporate, things like that because, nobody knows everything. So if I hear something, I like to implement it and try it. Okay, so again, I'm just gonna press up here first. I did sort of speedy sew these darts, so they're not gonna be my perfect, fabulous dart, but I think they will definitely do the trick. So first I'm going to press this to the side, and then I'm going to go get my bust start over here, and again I'm going to press this up. Okay, let's look at it from the right side. Waist start. And then my bust start. So taking the time to press your darts is important when you're sewing a muslin, because the look of your dart is going to improve, because you pressed it. If you sew your bodice together and you don't press your darts, they might be funked up and they might look a little something that could be smoothed out with the iron. So you always want to press your darts. All right, so now let's just look at this. It's always fascinating to me. Like, see? This looks like the front of me, right? And actually, if I was in there, it would probably go straight across like this. So I always find that kind of interesting, the shapes that you end up when you sew a dart. So now I'm going to come back over here, and to sew my bodice together, the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to sew my center back seam together. So I'm putting my I'm putting my left and right back pieces together, and I'm just gonna switch to Wonder Clips now. And really, I just need two. One for the top and one for the bottom. So I'm going to give that a 1/2 inch seam allowance there. And my stitch length is going to be 2.5. Then I'm going to sew my shoulder seams. So you can see I've got my back sewn together. And this fabric is laying pretty nice. I mean, I could press this, but I think it'll be okay. So I'm not going to take the time to press my vertical seams here, even though they would look a little bit better if I did. I think the shaping on the dart is going to be nice. Okay, so I've got my shoulders here. So I'm literally going to just pin together my shoulders and sew those. And I'm going to pin this one too. This is a, it's probably a cotton poly blend of shirting. So it's not a muslin, it's an actual shirt fabric. So I think sometimes when you're fitting, if you can find an inexpensive shirting fabric versus using straight muslin, you know, that can also give you a better idea of, you know, how things are fitting. Okay, so I made a boo-boo, and I'm going to show you what it is, and then I'll show you how to fix it afterward. See how my dart intake is not lining up with the side seam above the dart? The reason why that's happening is when I trimmed off that little bit under my arm and side seam, I didn't true that up. I just trimmed it and I didn't check the dart. So technically I should have added fabric back in there just to get that to match. I'll show you how to fix that after we try this on. But basically I can still sew it together at a 1/2 inch, I think. Okay, so I'm just going to pin together everything I need to sew. And then we're going to sew all these seams, and then I can try it on and we can see if my muslin is a fabulous fit. Let me just do this last side seam over here. So again, I'm just going to line this up, and remember I'm pressing my dart intake up. Like this. I think maybe what I'll do is I'll just pin my dart intake too so it doesn't flop around. Hi Diane, welcome. Diane, it's okay. You don't have to worry about being late. I'm just happy you joined us. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to fix over here. I'm just going to pin up my dart, and then I'm going to pin down here. All right, so now we're going to sew this together, and we're going to see how my muslin fits. I'm like super excited. All right, so this is just going to be quick work of sewing the shoulder seams and the side seams. So I'll start with the shoulder seams. I'm going to sew these. Shoulder seam done. I don't think I got any emails with from anybody with questions about their fitting. If you did send me emails, please let me, you know, please comment so I can go back and look for them. I didn't see any. Hi, Saremy, welcome. Hi, Shelby. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. From Dallas, welcome. Thank you guys for joining in. Okay. All right. Now, because I want the dart intake to be going up, I'm going to start from the waist edge, and I'm going to sew towards the armhole, so when I get to the dart, it's going in the direction I'm sewing. You know, I feel like we have a little celebrity in the house. I have to say that if you haven't stopped over and checked out Saremy's YouTube channel, So Live, she has a lot of cool stuff on there, so you should definitely check her out. Alright, let me just do this last side seam, and then we're going to do the sleeves, and I'm going to show you how I prepare a sleeve to insert it into the armhole. Alright, so we've got the bodice sewn together. I think I'm going to sew the center front. I'm going to sew it with the seam allowance face out, and I'm going to sew it up maybe, oh, Saremy says, stop it, not here to promote me, just a fan. Well, I can mention that you have a fabulous YouTube channel, and I'm super happy you're a fan and you're joining in. All right, so let me see here. Okay, I'm gonna sew up. Let's sew up. I mean, I have to be able to get into it, so maybe 2/3 of the way up. Oops. I think I'll be able to get into it if I stop here. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm just gonna show you this first. So here's my front. Oh, well actually I sewed it, well, alright, so my plans for sewing my center front seam on the right side out is now dashed because I did that wrong, but that's alright. So my seam is on the inside. That'll be okay. I thought I was sewing it out. But anyway, alright, so there's my bodice. That's kind of how it looks. Now I'm going to take my sleeves, and before we sew those underarm seams, I'm going to show you how I do my gathering stitches, and I'm going to just put a B here and an F here, and I'm going to put a B here. Oh no, that's an F, sorry. F, B for back and front. Plus I'll also know that I want to make sure I sew them so I have a right and left sleeve. So I'll put all this writing on the inside of my sleeve. So before I sew them, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my stitch length 3.5, and I am going to stitch along 1/8 of an inch from the edge, just between my notches. Now I'm not going to use my thread snips. I am going to pull the thread out so I have a tail that I can then gather these stitches up with. And then I'm going to sew my second row is going to be about 3/4 of an inch away. Oops. And of course, every time I use my manual thread cutter on the side of my machine, it makes my tail too short. So let me just rethread my machine. All right, now I'm going to just go about 3/4 of an inch. And again, I'm going to pull it out, and I'm going to cut it with my scissors to make sure I have a long enough tail so I don't come unthreaded again. So there's one sleeve. Let me do the other one. There's my first row, and I'm going to do my second row. All right, now the reason why I did it like this is because when I go to sew the sleeve into the armhole, I can pull both of the bobbin threads at the same time, and the cap is actually going to gather. So when I sew at 1/2 inch, I'll be sewing between my 2 rows of gathering stitches. So you can see them. All right, so now I'm going to sew my underarm seam, and again I'm going to use my, my 2.5 and 2.5 stitch length here. I'm just going to sew these. Oops. My needle came unthreaded again. Hold on. All right, so now let's sew. Uh-oh, something bad happened. Oh, I think my thread came out of the take-up lever. If you hear a noise like that, don't try to sew through it like I do sometimes, because I guarantee you it won't end well. If your noise is making a chunky sound when you're sewing, that means it's not threaded right. All right. All right, let's try that again. Okay. All right, so I am just going to sew straight down my underarm seam. All right, now I'm going to do the last seam, and then we can set these sleeves in and try it on. I'm super excited. Okay. All right, so now we're going to set in a sleeve. Oh, very nice camera angle. Thank you. I'm really lucky that I have this set up. I'll be honest, it's because my husband is a professional videographer, and oh, God bless you. My daughter sneezed. So I have all like pro video equipment, and actually sometimes he wants to take it back, but I give him that look like, honey, don't take my sewing my video equipment. I mean, if he needs it for a serious shoot, I will definitely let him take it, obviously, but I do love the fact that I have all of this stuff to work with to do my videos. All right, I'm going to make it bigger so I can show you here. Okay, so I'm going to turn my bodice inside out, and then I'm going to turn my sleeves are going to stay right side out. So I can see if I turn it like this, okay, you can see this is my front because here's my bust dart, here's my back. So I'm going to get my sleeves here, and basically you can see I've got my B and my F, right? So I know that this sleeve will not go into this hole because the front is here. So if I look at this one, you can see my B is over here and my front is over here. So I'm just going to stick it inside the hole like this, matching my underarm seam right sides together with my side seam. So that's the first step. And I'm just going to clip that. And then I'm going to just clip from the underarm seam to the notches on both sides. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, after I've got those secured at the notches, I am going to look at it like this. Okay, and I'm going to take my bobbin threads and I'm going to pull them. So I'm just going to tease out these threads right here. And notice what happens when I start to pull them. It's going to create a situation where I can pull them together once I can get both of them working here. And I'm just going to pet, let me make this a little bit closer. Okay, I'm just going to pet the fabric along the threads. So it's not so much that I'm pulling the threads, I'm sort of, you know, gently easing the fabric along the gathering stitches like this. And the idea is you want to create a situation where you're getting you know, the gathers going straight across between your two rows of stitching like this. So I'm going to pull it up a little bit over there, and then I'm going to go to the other side and do the same thing. My clip was in the way, hold on. Alright, so I just have to get the end of my tail here. Alright, so I'm going to pull, oops. So if you're not sure which is your bobbin and which one is your needle thread, if you put a different color in the bobbin, it makes it easy to see that you're actually pulling your bobbin thread. So I have white in my bobbin and I have blue in, or I'm sorry, I have blue in my bobbin and I have gray in my top, so it makes it easy to see. Probably not on camera because those are so close together, but you know, as long as you can tell what the bobbin threads are, they definitely pull easier than the needle threads. So now you can see here I've got a situation where I've pulled it too far, right? The cap is a little bit too short for the armhole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ease it back and I'm going to pin it. So basically I'm just evenly distributing the ease along the cap and fitting it into the armhole. And again, I'm just going to work my way up, and I want to make sure that as I go, it's almost like I'll ungather it to get it to fit. So I gather it up so it's easy to work with because it's a little bit smaller than the armhole, and then I sort of stretch it back out as I go. And if you remember from last week, I only have about a ½ inch of ease in this cap, so it's not a ton. But you can see how easy that was to fit that sleeve into this armhole. Now the trick is going to be to see if it looks nice when it's in there and on my body, so that's what we're going to do in a minute. I'm just going to put a few more pins in here and make sure I have all my gathers nice and even. Okay, see, so I'm just double checking, making sure everything is nice and even. Alright, so we have you know, I can see in there that everything looks nice and neat. So again, because Wonder Clips don't fall out, I'm going to go ahead and put the other sleeve in at the same time. That way I can sew them all in one shot. So I'm going to take my sleeve and I'm going to stick it into the hole. And again, the first step is going to be to line up my underarm seam and my side seams. And then I'm going to pin up to my notches. Like this. And then I'm going to pull my gathering threads. You know, and having both sleeves in your muslin makes a big difference to see how it fits. If you just put one sleeve in your muslin, I mean, you can get an idea, but what's going to happen is when you have both sleeves in, then you're going to really be able to tell how it's fitting across your upper chest and your upper back. Because when you sort of landlock those armholes, they can't slide around on your shoulder, and that gives you a really good indication of how things are fitting. So that's why it's really important to put two sleeves in when you're fitting, you know, when you're fitting your bodice. Okay, so I'm just going to pull this, and again, I'm just trying to ease the fabric along my gathering stitches enough So when I put it into the armhole, it's a little bit smaller than it needs to be. And then I can back it down evenly. And I can kind of look, you know, I can put my notch, you know, I know that this is where my shoulder seam goes, so I can attach that as well. You know, and then I can just easily ease the sleeve, ease the extra in the cap so it evenly fits, and then smush it out. Oh, McKaylee says, you just answered my question. I was going to ask why 2 sleeves. Yeah, it's funny because if you think about it, your armhole is open, right? And it's bigger than your body part there. So it can slide back and forth, and it can make it seem like you have enough room. But then when they're nailed down on both shoulders, that's when you can really see if it's going to fit right. So I always find one sleeve tends to be more agreeable than the other when I'm gathering the caps. Although in this case, they both seem to be behaving pretty nicely. But usually when I'm working on shirts, one sleeve always seems to come out better than the other one. I don't know if it's a conspiracy or whatnot, but all right, so again, I'm smoothing out and making sure I don't have any weird or extra gathering anywhere. I want to make sure it's nice and evenly distributed. Okay, so we've got, I think that looks nice. All right, so now we can sew the sleeves on, and then after the sleeves are on, I'm going to try this on for you so you can see how it fits. Now here's another thing you want to pay attention to when you're sewing your sleeve in. Remember, you took all of that time to create your sleeve cap and the shape of it, and you made adjustments to it, let's say. You want to make sure that the edges of your sleeve cap and your armhole are matching, because if your sleeve cap is sticking out farther than your armhole, then you're adjusting or taking from the cap. So make sure everything is even. I'm going to sew at a 1/2 inch all the way around, and you'll notice I am sewing between my 2 rows of stitching. Something is happening here with my let me see, I have a thread caught here. I want to just make sure that's not going to cause a problem. Yeah, see, it's catching on my thing. Let me just cut that. All right. Alright, so I'm just going to take my time and stitch around. Move my basting out of the way. Okay, so I'm coming to my start point here, just by the underarm seam. Alright, so that's one sleeve in. Okay, let me just stop and say, oh, I am using McKaylee wants to know what kind of fabric this is. This is probably a cotton poly blend shirting fabric. I bought 10 yards of it so I could play with, you know, different versions and, you know, different things with my muslin. Because after we get the good fit of the muslin, I'm going to show you how to create a princess seam from a bust start and a waist start. That's what we're going to do next week. Because some seams or style lines or shaping methods are better for certain figures. If you have a giant bust like I do, sometimes a princess seam can be more flattering. So I want to show you the difference of the fit on that. And Diane says, I usually have the same issue of one sleeve going in better than the other. I know, I don't know why that is, but it's kind of weird. I'm going to go with the one I just did was my harder sleeve because I was having a little bit of an issue at the beginning, but let's see if this one goes in easier. I mean, this sleeve seems to be going in so much easier than the first one. So I guess I'd rather get the pain in the butt one out of the way first. This one was definitely easier. All right, it's time to try it on. I'm super excited. All right, so I'm just gonna step off camera for a second and I'm gonna put this on. Now before I do that though, I am going to see how I have my rows of gathering stitches here. I don't want to take them out until I'm sure I'm happy with the way these sleeves are, because if I want to adjust the sleeve and the cap, it's easier to do that if you have your gathering stitches intact. So don't be tempted to remove the gathering stitch that you can see. I can also see I caught the armhole in a couple places, but I think we'll be able to get a general good idea of how this is going to fit me once I try it on. But I'm just smoothing out the gathering stitches. I'm not taking them out, but I'm sort of smoothing out the gathers on the row of stitching that's deeper into the sleeve, just so it will lay flat on me. All right, I'm going to pop this on and I will be right back. Okay. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch my view. All right, so let's look and see. I can see in my monitor what you guys are seeing. Okay, I think I like that so much better. Let me move this chair out of the way. Okay, so I think I like this better. Now, of course, this feels really yucky to me because it's at my actual waist. You know, I would never wear anything like that, but I think in the big scheme of things, I'm much happier with the shape of my sleeve, but my bust seems to be pulling a little bit. All right, so let's look at the sleeve. I'm going to stand here so you can see. and then I'm gonna turn to the back so you can see. And I'm gonna turn this way so you can see. All right, so I think, oh now, okay, so yes, I think, all right, so I raised my darts a whole inch. So now I'm thinking that's too high. So I think I need to lower those. And I think, I don't know, I'm trying to decide if I should give myself a little bit more room in my bust. I don't know, but the sleeve feels so much better than it did before. So I'm much happier with the sleeve. You can see from the side it really doesn't have any wrinkles, you know. And of course, sleeves have wrinkles, so there's always going to be a little bit of wrinkling. But I do think, let's review the things I did. And here's another thing. This is the reason why I wanted to put my seam allowance out, is because you want to have this shut so you can see what it's doing across your chest. So I'm just gonna put a pin here, just to, well, see if I can do that in a neat way. Like if I lay one flat and then just do it like that. See if I can pin it together, closed. Yeah, no, I guess I can't. Okay, so Mary's saying take a good look at your back. It seems tight at the waist and extra on the upper back. I loosened my back, and I think I do need to play with the darts. I haven't really looked at those yet, because that's easy to fix. I think the goal for me was to make my sleeve better, and I think I did do that. So it feels much better. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to, play with what the darts are doing at my waist, and then I'm going to button this shut, and when I get off, just so I can make sure everything is good. I did catch the armhole on this sleeve a little bit, so that's why it looks a little funky over here. But I think in the big scheme of things, my sleeve is, I'm happy with that for a sleeve. So I think I'm going to go back and lower my darts. Okay, so Christiana is saying drop the waist darts an inch. They were, let me show you what that looks like. Hold on. Okay, this is the muslin that I made before the one that we had on, and I was picking it up, and I think maybe I over guesstimated what I was pleating out, because you can see here they're too low, and to me that looked like an inch. But then I also tightened it under my arm, so I kind of think whatchamajigger, I kind of think maybe I shouldn't have taken it in at the top of my side seam. So this sleeve, let's look at this sleeve and you'll see what I mean. So this sleeve was adjusted, in the fabric. So basically it's got the adjustments that are on the muslin I just did. The difference is I stopped taking this in at the armhole. I just sewed in my underarm seam that little bit deeper, and I stopped. So the way it was fitting, I thought, oh, I'll just keep going, down my side seam, but maybe I really needed that room in my side seam, and I just needed to take my actual sleeve in. So, you know, sometimes I screw up. So I think maybe what I need to do is let out my side seams, lower my dart about half of what I raised it. So I had raised it a whole inch, but you can see this is too low. So that's why I raised it. And then Christiana says the right sleeve looks great all around. The left sleeve seems to have excess in the back. All right, well, I will take a closer look at that and see what I'm doing. I'll be honest with you, this, in the beginning of this video stream, I told you I fell down when I was, I fell down in the woods like halfway through my hike, and I stopped myself with my hand, so like my whole wrist and my pinky and everything is traumatized, and it took me a lot longer to get home because my back hurt too. So basically, I think I blew about an hour of time that I had put aside to work on this. So I would have liked to have sewn it together and, you know, check on some of these things before our live stream so I could explain them. But I figured it would be a big adventure just to show you what's really happening. And I mean, this is an example of, you know, you're working on a muslin, you're adjusting things, you know, and even if you're a professional at it, sometimes it doesn't work out exactly the way you thought, and you have to play a little bit more. But the sleeve was what I was concerned about, and the sleeve I feel like is fixed. You can see on this muslin all that fabric I took out. It's right here. Because what was happening was I was getting wrinkles right here, so I pulled them out by taking them out of the cap. So mostly I didn't really care about the darts so much because I know that's easy to fix. I wanted to fix the sleeve, and so I think, you know, the sleeve is good. But, and you know, and Christina's saying it's good to see the real process with you, and So Fun says your process is helpful. Thank you for explaining. Well, I like to be, you know, show you like my successes and my, you know, things that are not so successful, because in sewing that's what happens to everybody. So you can see here, because my center front edge is face out, I can then pin it up a little higher, and that will give you the better idea of how it's fitting across your chest if you can pin it closed a little higher once you have it on. But you can see my bust is not straining here because I didn't take out anything here. So here's my plan for my final muslin. I'm going to put back the 3/8 of an inch that I took out here, which equals to 3/4 of an inch on each side, or 1.5 inches across my bust. That was too much, so I'm going to put that back. I am going to make the sleeve the narrower sleeve. I'm going to lower my darts half of what I raised them. And I'm going to sew up a final muslin, and then I'll be wearing that muslin next Friday. And also next Friday I'm going to show you how to create a princess seam from the shoulder down to the waist, using your waist dart, or if you rotated it to a bust dart already, whatever. But I'm going to show you how to do all of that next week. So Fun says, oh no, I wasn't here for the beginning. Thanks for your efforts while in pain. Well, you know, I love hiking, and hiking is my, like, my therapy, my exercise. It's my best thinking time. And I was coming up a fairly steep hill to get back to the trail that brings me back around, and I just tripped and I caught myself. And honestly, I don't think I'm seriously hurt. I just think I slept wrong and my back hurt, you know, when I got up, and then when I fell, I think it aggravated it even more. So I had to go half speed all the way back to the car. But you know, my wrist, I can move it, so I don't think there's anything seriously wrong with it. It just hurts because I fell on it. But anyway, so that's my whole thing. I will tell you, I have so many things going on that if something hiccups in my schedule like that, it really puts me behind what my goals are for the day. So I apologize for not having more of this done ahead of time, but I do enjoy getting together with you and, you know, to see what's happening and to see, you know, the process, I guess, is valuable even if it doesn't come out perfect. But I think it's good for you to see this sleeve as well because, let me just turn to the back so you can see it. You know, because this was the one that I tested before I cut out my new one. So comparing the way this fits compared to the one I had on just a minute ago that I sewed with you today, I can see what I need to do. I'm going to let this out, lower the darts half the amount I picked it up, and then I'm going to cut out another one and see how that looks. And of course, putting back underneath at the top of the side seam will also give me a little bit more in the sleeve. It may have been that was just a little bit too much to take out. So basically, that's where we are with the bodice. Next week, I am going to show you how to do a princess seam from a waist dart. So I'll bring my pattern back to just having a waist dart. I'm going to show you how to create the princess seam. And I'll be wearing my completed muslin next week, and I will actually do it before Fab Fit Friday, so it will be ready to go. So anyway, that's my report for today. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. I am teaching on Sunday, if you're joining me for the yoga pants at Fabric Mart Fabric. That is a sold-out class. I'm also teaching a bunch of classes between now and the end of October. If you're not getting my newsletter, go check that out because I have all of my classes listed. The one that I'm super excited about is I am teaching the top-down center-out method of pants fitting with stitches at home in October on the 8th and 9th. And I will tell you, this is going to be a step-by-step hand-holding class where you're going to be able to learn how to do every step of the process from start to finish. So basically, if you're joining me for that, I think that will be the last pants class you will ever need, because using this top-down center-out method really makes it easy to balance the leg and to fit yourself and to really understand what the pants pattern is doing and how to make it fit onto your body. So I am very, very excited about that class, as well as all the other classes I'm teaching. So I hope you guys have a lovely weekend, and I will see you, well, Fit Tip Tuesday, there will be a pants related item there, and I will see you next Friday for how to do a princess seam. All right, so also if you have any questions about what your muslin is doing, please post those and I will help you if you feel like I can help you after what happened today. But I really feel like it's very close. I'm going to fix it and it's going to be fine. So there you go. Oh, Judy wants to know where she can sign up. I will put a link. If you're following me on Instagram, I have a link in my link tree, in my link in bio there. Or if you get my newsletter, there's a link there. Or I will put a link to that class in the description of this video as soon as I get off. Yes, it is Stitches at Home. So if you go to Stitches at Home, if you Google that, Stitches October, and then look for the top-down center-out method, you'll find that there. But I will put a link below this video when I get off. All right, so I hope you guys have a lovely weekend, and I will see you again very, very soon. Oh, Jerry says it's all good, real-world experience. Thank you so much. Yep, you're always going to get the real-world experience with me. That's for sure. All right, so thank you guys for watching, and have a lovely weekend. All right, now I have to give